Welcome to the Bite of Art podcast, your daily dose of contemporary art insights. My name is Ivan Despotovic, and together with my guests, I am going to guide you through the latest trends and developments in contemporary art in Europe. Bite of Art podcast is part of the Bite initiative that is co-founded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union, and our aim and ambition is to bring innovation in creation, dissemination, and consumption of contemporary art, making it more attractive, more accessible, and mainstream to young people across Europe. Here with me is Vuk Vidor, a famous French-Serbian artist and architect, and a person who is using mainly language of pop-up culture to express himself in his work. So welcome Vuce to the Bite of Art podcast and to the episode where we are going to talk much about the art market and how to start a collection and so on. But before that, I would like to talk a little bit about you. So first of all, did I announce you correctly?
As an artist, yes.
As an artist, yes. Okay. So there is one really interesting thing to you, and I read so many times, so listen to you speaking and explaining that your artwork belongs to sub-realism. And people have difficulties to understand it, though I actually understood, but I am not that courageous to explain it next to you. So I would like to ask you to explain what is that artistic direction.
Well, we called it under-realism. As a joke under surrealism, and it was mainly an idea to put under the same umbrella a group of painters, mostly painters, who were dealing more with imagery which has to do with imagination and inner worlds, as opposed to some hyper-realistic or abstract current in painting. And we felt it was underrepresented, and that we were the underdogs, and so the under-realism name kind of came naturally. But so it's a group of painters who come from mostly Europe, French, Serbian, German, Swiss, Iranian, Bulgarians. There's a lot of different nationalities, but mostly people who were close to the Paris scene. And that's how we started doing exhibitions between Paris and Belgrade first, because it was sort of half and half. And it's been already 10 years. So a lot of things came from that, indirectly or directly, because there seems to be a return to painting in a more, let's not say traditional way, but in a more open way, not closing it to something which used to be acceptable, but finally trying to open it up to different forms and different worlds.
And actually, this is something you started from the beginning of your career. It's just actually that you find a common space and define it 10 years ago.
But it was more because we felt that as people who mostly do painting, I do other things sometimes, but mostly painting, but there was a void in the galleries, in the way it was presented in the museums. It was simply something which was not hip. It wasn't fashionable. It wasn't trendy. So it doesn't mean we're interested in being trendy, but just to prove to people that a lot of painters are doing this sort of works and they exist and they should be treated equally and be part of the whole painting scene.
I think that we could talk a lot about your career, but unfortunately, Bite of Art podcasts are not dedicated to the persons, but rather to the topics that we want to educate our listeners and especially younger audience. This is what Bite is mostly devoted for, bringing closer contemporary art to the young generations. And you mentioned also that you are connecting French and Serbian scene, and you're from the very beginning, and you are French and Serbian artists, and we are now even at the very space where there is exhibition, mostly French and Serbian artists, if I am correct. And can you tell us a little bit more where we are? And
well, it's in the Salon of the Belgrade City Museum, and it's an exhibition organized by my brother, who's also an artist, and he was part of our group. And many of the painters which are presented here were initially part of that group, but as I said, it took bigger sizes and bigger dimensions, and so there has been several exhibitions in France recently dealing with this sort of topics and imageries, and this is like a small version of what has been happening. There was a big museum show in Montpellier last year with over 135 painters, different generations. And since we know each other, this was more like a friendly, professional approach to bring some of them to Belgrade. Some have already been in Belgrade, exhibited with our group, but it's nice to keep the connection going.
Up and go. Thank you. And now I want to open why we are here, to open the topic about what we are here. In Byte, we are trying to develop audience, and we are always thinking about developing audience of contemporary art, but what's next? And I think that next is that a lot of people who became an audience of contemporary art, frequent and regular, have potential to become buyers, collectors, and so on, but let's say, they do not know enough about the art market, the collecting, and so on. So since your experience is mostly related with Europe and including Serbia, but mostly France and Europe, I would like to ask you to start from the beginning. How does the art market look like today? Are there any particular, let's say, artistic directions or styles that are favorable among collectors and so on?
Well, it's a very wide question, because the art market became a very important player in the art world, which wasn't the case that much. I think it started mostly in the 90s with the advent of big collectors getting connected with auction houses, the big three, Sotheby's, Christie's, and at the time there were Phillips and others, and the whole speculative and investment element came into collecting. So you have different aspects. You have people who are really in it because they love it, and they have the means to buy the works, build a collection. Sometimes many of these big collectors end up having their own museums, especially in America or in England or elsewhere where it's possible, because you get some kind of tax exemptions, and it's easier. And then you have people who are in it just for the speculative aspect, which is not always the good side of it. But there's been an incredible increase in the dynamics of the prices in the last 20 years. And before, you could probably expect high prices from dead artists. And recently it has become quite the opposite. You have contemporary living artists reaching very, very high prices. If you're contemporary and dead, it's even better. Like Jean-Michel Basquiat, for instance, is always the one you show when you want to explain the trajectory. But there is an incredible rise in speculation and in interest. So it has become a very different scene. The art scene has become very different. You got the art fairs, you got the big biennales, you got mega galleries, which didn't exist before, who are like powerhouses with 50, 60 artists. They even started becoming more powerful than most museums, actually funding museums. So it's a very intricate game, and you really have to be initiated into it. So if you come from just the idea that you want to buy art because you love it, and maybe you can have certain means and you can access some art, the best way is to probably follow your own instinct and gradually build it up. Some people want to buy art and they have advisors, which is another group of people who have appeared in the last 15, 20 years and became quite influential. So it's really a mosaic of different situations and different patterns and ways to get into it. So you have the very simple, enthusiastic one, and you have the very organized, speculative aspects. So it's like a wide range of different possibilities.
Let's talk a little bit about how hard for each actor is at the art market or to enter the art market. Speaking about the artists, maybe, or even galleries or auction houses, those are all the key players, let's say, at the art market. What is the hardest thing for them?
It's who you know. Basically, it's a game. It's a game. Some people can play it, some people can't. You have very good artists who simply don't have the social skills to get into the game. Some people who are much worse artists but are very clever at mingling and getting into the system and functioning very well in it. So there is no rule. It's really an individual thing. You can't say there's a system.
That there's a system. It's like you remind me of like sports skills. So each player need to have some skill set, and it's the same like here. You need to have certain skill set. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how talented you are.
Well, there's always a bit of luck. There's connections where you are. What do you do at a given time? If you crystallize, catch the zeitgeist at the moment, and then you become relevant or interesting, which can be short lasting or it can be longer lasting, depending. But it's really a very individual game.
Yeah.
And no one has the same story.
Yeah, and let's say that's your experience as an artist. Like when you enter the market, you need some galleries to support you, to define, to allow you to become visible, but also to help you to define the value of your artwork and so on, and to develop it over the time. But now, what I'm most curious about is how new technologies are impacting the galleries. Previously, you needed the gallery. So you needed an audience who is going to come to the gallery and ask the curator, and then curator is asking artists. Now I can text you a direct message on Instagram and skip the gallery. So does in this sense something changed for all those players with new technologies? Were new technologies some disruption?
Well, new technologies are always two-sided. There's a good side and there's always a bad side. So some people got noticed through it. Some people abused it and got sidetracked. It always depends. It's really very subtle things which define how it functions. You can be present on Instagram and show your work, and somebody notices it and it relays to somebody else, and then you get offered a show, and then a gallery comes in. That's, let's say, the ideal process, but it doesn't necessarily happen. So I don't know if it's always a new thing, but is added to the system. But at the end, I think the quality of the art is what should be the pillar of everything.
Yeah, and you already built your career long before the technologies arrived to this level that we know them today. But I see that so many young artists are actually trying to get use of these new technologies, even through blockchain platforms. Now you don't need any more auction houses, you don't need galleries and so on. You have a lot of artists, either physical or digital artworks, who are selling it directly and have access to the global market. Previously, I assumed that your, let's say, access to the audience and to the buyers was limited by the renommee of the gallery. Now, today, I think that's changed. And
but even the galleries are playing the game, so they're trying not to lose track of anything. They always try to be in the movement. Otherwise, they might fear of being. There's a fear of being left out. But there's a big, even for the galleries, it's difficult. You have the very, very big ones who are very powerful, and they're actually big money machines with investment funds behind and a lot of big collectors. The middle galleries are always the one who struggle the most, and they have the smaller one who sort of get by, depending on where they are. I don't know how it's going to develop. I have no idea, because everybody's predicting, there's always everybody's predicting a fall at some point and a reset of everything. We'll see.
Yeah, but they're predicting that for everything, for
Well, some things are too big to fail, so there's always a system that supports it. But maybe at some point there's maybe just an adjustment that has to be done between some insane prices for works which you don't really understand why they're worth that much, and others who don't have the visibility.
Yeah.
Which is, like I said, a problem of this group, or it's much more difficult because you're showing something which is challenging. So there can't be a consensus. Like if you take a lot of very famous and successful artists today, they do products. This is not a product. It's a product of a long experience and work, and it's a big struggle. And everyone here has that system. So they're not selling products. They're not selling the same painting 20 times. They're having one, and they're trying to develop it. So people are used to investing in people who do series and products, and they can identify with them like a brand, basically. Yeah. And that's the difference between an artist being a brand and an artist being an artist.
But there is always the other side of the coin, where actually this artwork or any other here can become a legacy of a time at certain moment if you know to recognize them. So I think that this is also another importance of why this is, because this is commenting something. This is commenting some view of the world, some experience of that artist, how he is viewing the world. So I think it's
just his world.
Oh, his world. Exactly.
That's the simple way.
Yeah.
But it's that's the struggle. It's you have to constantly battle with these things.
Are there any regulations at the art market?
Regulations? Oof. Well, most people say that the art world is the only place where insider trading is allowed, which is not really allowed in different businesses, but in the art world it's common knowledge that you can do it. It's a very specific bubble. Yeah.
Wow. I know that actually a lot of people, for example, here in Serbia, are having difficulties because to their understanding, the art market is not developed here, and it's mostly subjected to the personal connections and so on, and it doesn't function like in Europe. So I was wondering, what is so good in Europe that we don't have it here?
I don't know if it's good, it's just the way it is, but we don't have a tradition of big collectors because we come from a different history. But I always talk about the Romanian model because they managed very quickly, 15 years, let's say, to build a scene, to have it exported outside, to have very successful, high-quality artists, mostly painters. So then there needs to be a system between the regulations, the laws, and the initiative from the galleries, the artists, and the collectors. And when you don't have the whole system working together, it's quite difficult. So that's why for us here, it's always been in the gray area, because we don't have regulations. There's a lot of holes in the system. And that needs to be readjusted, because once they understand that there's a profit to be made on all levels, financially, of course, but also in terms of reputation, in terms of the way a country is perceived, the way you export your artists, because that's a good sign also. Once that switch is done, maybe we could create something relevant and not always be in the sort of struggle and keep it on the local level.
Well, what I'm curious is how do you see young people as collectors and buyers? Do you think that they are already now in position? Because I see that younger and younger people are becoming more and more wealthier, and I think that they are in position of buying high quality art, making a collection and so on, but at their age I don't think that they have any, let's say, skill set and they needed to develop it. Do you see, for example, as your potential buyers?
I have no idea who potential buyers could be, because you can reach anyone. It's just how you perceive the work. But when you start, you should just follow your instincts. Yeah, and then not complicate it through thinking that you don't know about it, or you need education, or you need this and that. I mean, if you're already attracted to it, it's a good step. And then you can build up the whole knowledge aspect. No. It's easy. It takes a little bit of time, but it's not quantum physics. It's really about having an overview of what's happening, seeing what you like. Even if you like things which are maybe not a good quality, but you're sincerely into it, why not? You don't have to be the greatest collector in the world.
Yeah, but it's something personal at the end.
It should be, yeah.
Yeah, it should be something that drives you, that brings your emotions on and so on, or your mind on. So I think
that's the best way to start. And then if you realize you made a mistake and that actually something else is better, and you can connect to it in a different way.
Yeah, your beginnings at the beginning, did you have problems entering the art market? What were the biggest challenges, or it was more
when you start working with galleries, you're already part of the whole system. So,
but how to start? For example, I hear so many times that young artists are having difficulties establishing cooperation with galleries. Galleries do not have the capacities of hosting them and so on, working with them.
Well,
aside of quality, there is always that.
The best way is when they come to you. If you go to them, that's the rule. If you're an artist and you come to a gallery, 99% of the time they won't even look at what you're doing. So you have to organize yourself in a way that you do things maybe on your own or with a group of people, and you create a dynamic. Then people hear about it and they come and see it. That's usually the best way. If you wait for someone to come and you don't initiate anything, nothing will happen.
Yeah,
it's not obvious.
Do you think, for example, it's more important, because I think that today a lot of values are lost in many aspects of our lives in the world, and I want to ask you about the art world. Do you think it's more important that someone presents himself best? Because I see so many artists today who are really good at presentation and social media and so on, and because of that, galleries need to take them. Because they want to use the momentum among the audience, among the buyers, among collectors, and so on. Do you think it's more important, and what should be the stance of galleries in regard to that? They cannot only go to high quality art because they are going to not having.
Well, they're not naive. Most of the time when they take on an artist which has a following or something, they expect it to have a certain dynamic around it. It doesn't always happen. So it's a bit of a gamble. There's galleries, big galleries, which take on artists all the time. If they do one show, if it doesn't work, you're out. So it depends on the politics of the galleries, really. But the best way is to, if you have a group of people and you work together, or you have connections between yourselves, make your own thing somewhere, anywhere. Film it, put it out there, and promote it in your own way, and things usually get heard of. And
your, for example, sub-realism group, I would call it under-realism, group, you support each other in that sense, or?
Yes and no. I mean, we all have our own ways and paths, and some are not even in the same cities, and then some work with some galleries, some don't. So it's it was just a way at a given time to do something. And something might happen or not, doesn't, That's what the English did in the 90s, when they had the young British artist with Damien Hirst and everybody around him. They just started doing shows in odd places, and then somebody heard of it, saying, "Oh, this is interesting. I want to put money into it." Became a famous collector, opened his own gallery, like Saatchi. So things like that can happen. The Romanians did it their own way. The English did it one way. The Germans do it all the time because they have a completely different structure, and it's way more professional. The Americans is again another system.
You have experience with the American system, or?
It's all the same system. When you do art fairs, you're in Miami, you're in Paris, you're in Madrid, in Chicago. It's always the same people. Mm-hmm. Not always the same galleries, but you keep seeing the same people everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like a club.
Yeah, club. So if I need to put some the bottom line for an artist, they need to have diverse skill set to enter the market and navigate that market. Otherwise, if they're not pushing, they're going to be out. For young buyers, let's say, or collectors, I would say that the bottom line is that they should have to rely on their feelings mostly, and emotions, and
also if they're in a given place, maybe support the artists where they are. It's important I know Serbian collectors support mostly Serbian artists because they have access to it and the prices are easier. When you have big collectors, they buy everything anywhere, doesn't matter. But if you start, it's good to start where you are.
Where you are, and then from that on. Yeah, because I see that young buyers are mostly relying on digital platforms and trying to somehow interfere into some other markets because they think that they're, for example, people from Serbia, they're more popular, and from Europe to American market and so on, because they think that they're going to find some higher value, I think, there, which is wrong. So I agree completely that you should start from your house and try to develop your portfolio, let's say, of collector. And for the galleries and auction houses, actually the bottom line is that they should get advance of digital technologies, but they're not, according to your opinion, still not threatened of the existence.
I don't think so, because they're so big, they're going to absorb it anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever new comes, they're going to take it. See if it works. If it doesn't, they get rid of it. The technology is always a tool. It's not an end in itself. No, especially not. Even people who work with technology, that's not what's going to define the quality of your work. If you use new technologies, it doesn't mean you're an interesting artist.
Yeah.
But you can do drawings and do something that's never been done before. So.
But there is always that question, like even people who are developing technology are afraid of a lot of times about what technology can become now with artificial intelligence and so on, whether we are going to be able to handle it. So I agree completely, technology is a tool and I stand for that stance, but still a lot of people are not sure how it is going to develop in the future and to what extent how we are going to navigate through these technologies and so on.
With AI?
With the AI.
Well, I don't think AI will be able to do what a painter or somebody who uses these old techniques can do. It can obviously play on the technological level and produce images, but I don't think that actually will give more value to paintings and drawings and things which are man-made and handmade, because when everything becomes digital and can be reproduced with technology, it will lose the value. So actually the value of these things will go higher. That seems to be like an obvious thing, because you'll only have one painting like this. And if a machine can do 10 exactly the same with the new technologies, it will still be a machine-made painting. So it can never reach the same level. I mean, you can say that Andy Warhol was doing prints of,
Yeah.
But it was a different thing.
Yeah.
I think this level of technology is going to actually make this more valuable.
More valuable in the future.
Yeah.
I agree completely, and this is why I'm in favor of technology in art and actually welcoming to amplify everything what art should stand for, reach out for, and do at the end. Okay, Vuče, thank you very much for your time and for discussion, and I think that actually our listeners are going to use their gut after this episode in seeing and trying to reach and become collectors and buyers and trying to perceive local art from some different angle.
You don't need to be afraid of anything. It's in the art world there's a lot of mystification. It's complicated and you're not initiated enough, and they try to make it look very, very unreachable on many levels, but that's not true.
I need to say that at the very beginnings, a lot of people told me that they are afraid of art.
Yeah.
Young people, they are afraid of art and they do not want to consume it because they don't want to be ignorant.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's a mystification process.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Then
if you go to a church in Italy, you don't need education to understand what's going on in the painting, and it's a contemporary modern art complex, which having all these theories and trying to explain works all the time, trying to put them in context, trying to explain the process. And that often, the more you get discourse, the more you get this sort of language added to language, you can probably say that the artwork is maybe weaker than a work which doesn't need to be explained. And so it's another story.
Another story, yeah, for another episode.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being a guest of Bite of Art podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Bite of Art podcast. Subscribe to our channel and follow us for more trends in contemporary art. See you until next episode.